Welcome, Jason and Shiku. Fantastic to have you as part of our white paper and part of this interview. Thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be an absolute pleasure, and I'm really excited to get into it. I had the pleasure of meeting you yesterday. Well, Jason, I didn't meet Shiku yesterday. I've met her today for the first time. But do you guys want to take a quick chance just to introduce yourselves and let us know a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jason Eisen, originally from the US. I've been based in Nairobi for just over 8 years now. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm also a recovering consultant. So I first started coming to East Africa, doing some consulting work, and fell in love with the region, was inspired by the tech happening here and the problems that were being solved, and had an idea, couldn't stop thinking about it, and 2 months later quit my job and moved to Nairobi. That was back in 2013, at the time to start the first taxi app on the continent. That's Maramoja, which is still running and expanding around the continent. And it was through that we learned about this issue with trust. We started to understand that it wasn't about how do I get a taxi, but how do I get a taxi that I trust? And we started getting obsessed with this idea of trust. And what started as a discriminator in that taxi app around better trust for people looking for drivers became Utu, which is what I run now, the company that we're talking about today that does basically trust infrastructure for the internet using some different deep technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, but it all started from this one very real use case of how do I find a trusted taxi, and kind of spun out from there. And yeah, so I'm based here in Nairobi. We're about a team of 60 between Utu and Maramoja, and expanding quite fast. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Cool.
So yesterday you did briefly take me through the ins and outs of Utu, and the best version of it that from a basic version in my mind was you're looking at a trust-based initiative that you're building on top of the exponential growth we see in essentially trustless blockchain technology environment. So that's a bit of a mouthful in terms of trust on top of trustless. So I thought it might be a good start by unpacking key elements of this initiative. So, things like, I know a core element of what you guys are doing and what you are a part of is obviously crypto and cryptocurrency space, as well as the blockchain space. Perhaps, it seems that people are buying into crypto. It seems to be becoming a little bit more mainstream. I'm even seeing billboards as I drive down the road to invest in crypto. And it looks like people are buying into an arena without a full understanding of the currency, the mechanisms, and the overall landscape. Do you want to give us just your thoughts around that as a team?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll have some comments, and then I'll let Shiku jump in. Shiku's our head of marketing at Utu. She's a marketing geek and has tons of experience in the fintech crypto space across lots of roles for the past few years. I'll start off, but I guess the first thing I would say is that it's definitely worth putting some time to understand like this new world order that is being built with crypto and blockchain. But generally speaking, I would say to people like, do your own research and don't buy what you don't understand. But the caveat to that is you got to jump in with a small amount to get some skin in the game and learn by doing. It's this deep rabbit hole that requires, at this stage of the game, some specialized understanding, and it's not just point and click and set everything up and it just works. But this is the direction that we're trying to get it. But as you start to get in, you'll start to understand the massive value proposition that's being developed by a lot of these platforms, decentralized platforms. But you'll also understand some of the risks and constraints that are facing the sector. And so I would say it's a huge opportunity, and we're just in the early days. Like, we're in the 1990s equivalent of the internet still, right? And these tools weren't so accessible to everybody back then. There was a lot of learning curve. Fast forward a few years and they feel like second nature.
Yeah, fantastic. I can only understand, Jason. I mean, so I've jumped in myself, as I said, and I've taken to watching YouTube and listening to podcasts to really get a handle of it. And to be honest, a lot of it flies past me, but at the same time, I have managed to absorb quite a lot. And I'm not someone who's grown up in the fintech space. So I think if someone wants to, just do a bit of research, there are a number of resources online you can do to get yourself sort of acquainted.
Exactly. And that's what I actually wanted to say, that, today compared to a few years ago, there's a lot of content out there that people can learn more about crypto, and it's very positive nowadays as opposed to at the beginning. A bit of it was a bit negative, especially in Africa. A lot of people were learning about crypto from scams, and they quickly died out, which just points to the value that is beginning to grow within the space and the concepts that are coming up around crypto and blockchain, including DeFi. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's interesting you say that, because there seems to be a big surge in crypto in certain countries as well, where the economy is a little volatile, and people are seeing crypto growth as a stability than hedging your bets against the currency fluctuations that are happening. So I think it's growing on our continent well. So do you guys? I guess you've kind of answered it for me, but I mean, I'll just ask the question because a lot of people ask me this. Do you think we're in some sort of a bubble? You both hinted no, but or do you feel crypto is about to redefine the world economy? I know I'm asking you to sort of put your names against something here, but what do you guys feel just at the top of your heads?
Yeah, like you said, we hinted. It's definitely not a bubble. We've seen, a lot of price movements, and most people, of course, nowadays learn about crypto from the price movements. And especially now, as we speak, there was a huge bloodbath yesterday, which is improving as we talk. And I would say that, it's not a bubble, and it's from fact that big companies are getting into it. We are seeing huge financial institutions and payment companies like Visa and PayPal. And of course, Elon is constantly talking about different kinds of currencies. His favorite being Dogecoin, which maybe is not mine.
When he's not appearing on talk shows.
SNL, exactly. And Tesla, has Bitcoin, even though again it's debatable. And I think we'll see real value just in terms of not just people investing, but beyond that. And that's what financial institutions and big people are telling us from what they're seeing in the conversations on Twitter and everything. It's not a bubble, in short.
Great. I agree. I mean, you're starting to see huge institutional investments from across sectors and across geographies. And I think one of the things that does is at some point it creates a tipping point where the amount of money that you risk as a large company putting into some of your treasury into, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, what you risk to lose is totally outweighed by the risk of what your competitor stands to gain when they make that investment and you don't. And losing $10 million from your treasury sounds terrible, but your competitor turning their $10 million into $500 million with a smart bet in crypto sounds even worse. And so at some point, all these large institutions will be forced to make these investments, if not only to keep up. We're going to see market retracements. We're going to see corrections. But I think what we're starting to see right now is a lot of these people and institutions waking up to the transition that's happening. And I think a lot of this is being driven by DeFi, which is really starting to reshape the entire financial system. Sorry, DeFi, decentralized finance, from top to bottom, with a pretty simple and pretty powerful value proposition, which is we give our money to banks and they lend it out. They make a lot of money with our money, and we only end up with some crumbs. And DeFi really says software can lend out your money better and you should take the profits and give the software the crumbs. So this is a strong value proposition to anyone who has money in the bank and is looking at their interest rate and wondering it doesn't even keep up with inflation. So banks are going to be forced to really innovate in this era to create new products to stay relevant.
So, sure, thank you. I guess you started hinting at blockchain and blockchain technology. That's something I'm fascinated in, and I think many people don't understand what actually powers and facilitates cryptocurrencies. and or who's responsible for what. So can you actually elaborate a little bit on blockchain technology and how this constantly evolving mechanism is sort of the backbone of crypto's existence, if I can say that?
Yeah, sure. Blockchain is indeed, it's the backbone of cryptocurrency, blockchain, or decentralized ledger technology. Sometimes you'll hear people use that term. For sure, they're at the heart of crypto. But I often push back when I'm asked to explain how blockchain works. Okay, secretly, that's because I don't really understand in depth. Anyone who says that they do understand in depth and with great detail is probably lying. I think there's only like a handful of people in the world that truly understand the math involved at a deep level. But what I would say actually is that it's wholly unnecessary to the average person to understand the inner workings of blockchain. Understanding the value proposition is important, but now the technical mechanism by which that's achieved, I'll give an example. You probably type HTTP into your browser a few dozen times a day, but do you know what HTTP stands for? Do you know how it works or what it does or what that means? Probably not. Maybe you do, but likely you don't. But you still browse to the internet and go to websites and use their services, and that doesn't really have an impact. And to some extent, this conversation about which blockchains are going to run the economy is really a conversation about which letters we're going to put before the website that we want to go to. Okay, that's an oversimplification, but replacing the HTT in HTTP, right, with a different protocol. Yeah, maybe Shiku can talk a little bit about the actual benefits that these type of systems derive more than the technical models, though.
Yeah. To simplify it in a nutshell, blockchain technology, by virtue of it being a public ledger that everyone with a computer can see transactions on the blockchain, really removing the third party in the transaction and enabling anyone to track records of transactions on the blockchain is one of the values of blockchain. And of course, the biggest one that a lot of us talk about is the immutability of a blockchain, so that whatever is entered on the blockchain cannot be changed and cannot be tampered with. And of course, that brings in an element of what information can you trust. And in such a system, fraud is very difficult. And again, that's real value in many sectors, including financial services, which we are leveraging. And Jason will talk a bit more about that in the companies we are working with.
Yeah, maybe I would, just add, blockchains we'll use this term trustless, meaning that the value exchange.
Jason, sorry, I was just about to say, maybe this is a good point to go in trust versus trustless, and we can roll from there. So.
Absolutely, yeah. So blockchains will often describe blockchain transactions as trustless, meaning it's driven by a smart contract, meaning that we know that when the conditions are met for a contract to be executed, both sides will do what they've said they're going to do, whether that's the service that's to be rendered or value in terms of tokens to be transferred in a certain place. So all of that can be done without the need for a trusted intermediary. So this is the role that most of the platforms that we currently use today, whether we're buying a holiday or taking a taxi, these platforms are mediators and brokers within a transaction between you and another person, and they take their fee for that. So removing the need for that trust layer in terms of the platform that's operating the service and taking a huge rent from it, and so that part becomes trustless. But the problem is you still have another human at the other end of most of these transactions, right? So imagine you're on, let's take one of the partners that Utu works with, a company called CryptoTask, which is building like a decentralized gig economy platform. So you can hire your coders and your designers on there, and you can be sure that the exchange of value will be trustless and automated. But now how do you actually choose which coder or which designer you want to work with in the first place? And this is the layer of trust that Utu is actually talking about, this interpersonal moderator of trust, understanding out of all the universe of service providers that I could choose, or people I could choose or products I could choose to transact with, which is the one that's going to be the best fit for me as an individual in this exact place and time and certain context. And this is really what Utu as a trust infrastructure is about. So this is whether we're working on the decentralized economy in these trustless platforms, or providing an extra layer of trust in traditional centralized platforms.
Yeah. And another example that we can cite that we work with is a company called Jamboro, which is offering a peer-to-peer lending space for circles, and we know circles are really big in Africa. And so in that sense, it allows borrowers and lenders to interact in a more trustworthy environment, based on what Jason has just explained, and people within their circles can see what other people are doing. A lender can see if this borrower, what level of credit worthiness they have based on the trust infrastructure that they'll integrate with. And of course, a borrower gets to see a lender based on recommendations from people in their circle. So really, there's an environment of trust that is built around the financial service that is more human, as opposed to just based on random scores, credit scores, and
that's a really great point, Shiku. If I can just tag on to that for 1 second, like if we think about how an organization makes lending decisions versus how an individual might make lending decisions, for an organization, a bank, a credit score is a great mechanism, but it's still limited. It's historical in nature. And if you lack that historical data, it's pretty hard to have a credit score. It means we're excluding millions from the financial system. And there are ways to move beyond that with contextual and relational models of credit that complement those historical models. This is what Utu does in the financial services space, to try to expand access to people to more credit in more ways, whether centralized loans or decentralized. But now if you think about like a credit score versus a narrative description, nobody really thinks in terms of numbers when it comes to trust. At least as an individual, I wouldn't think, oh yeah, I trust Graham. He's a 7.6 trustable person with a confidence interval of 80% and a score of 150. No, I think, oh, he's this and that, and I've worked with him on this and that, and he delivered in all those cases in the past, so I trust him. Or my two friends or my cousin and my sister both trust him and have worked with him on these things. So this is the type of descriptive trust information that we try to provide, rather than a simple score, to capture the complexity of a human, not just turn them into a number.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, to tell you that from my point of view anyways. I mean, I suppose I did an interview a while ago with a professor called Mark Ritson, who's very well known, and he pointed out many things in life. He's invented a word, and it's actually called bothism, which doesn't exist, right? It's not a real word, but it's a really nice way of describing how two things fit perfectly together. And in what you're creating is we're looking at this trustless environment, and you're enabling there to be just a bit more rigor in that environment. And I think it's a great place to be. I mean, what a great base to set yourself from. So thank you for the description. And, I said to you yesterday very briefly, I think, some of it, most of it lands, but some of it still, I perhaps need more work on. But I guess it's because I'm not in the fintech world, but I'm slowly getting there. Some of our clients exist in the financial sector as well. Some of our clients are in the more the telecom space, etc. So for me, this is a really exciting conversation to have. I guess my segue there would be, many people are betting on DeFi or decentralized finance as a complete overhaul. So I know you've already delved into this to an extent, but is there, anything that we could discuss for a second regarding financial institutions or telecoms of adjustments that could be made, not made, etc., to sort of integrate within the systems you're talking about? Because it seems right now that it's very, if you know what I mean, tech world based. It might, jar to an extent, but you're explaining to me yesterday, it doesn't jar. It's completely complementary, and it could be even better than it is already. Could you elaborate?
It certainly can be. It really depends on how progressive these institutions want to be and how much innovation they can tolerate, I suppose. I think the main storyline or the red thread to pick on here is that about a year and a half ago, let's say end of 2019, I think there was about $40 million in assets total locked up in DeFi contracts. We fast forward to today, okay, maybe not today, but last week, last time I checked the numbers, I think it was $150 billion locked up in DeFi contracts. So from 40 million to 150 billion in the span of about 18 months. That is not going to reverse trend. That number is probably lower than 150 today because of the market retracement, but the trend is much bigger than that. And so the question is, this value proposition of earning on some of these DeFi platforms, I can earn 15, 17% annual percentage yield on the money I put in. That's hard to ignore. But the big question on all these platforms is trust. Do I trust the platform? How do I trust the platform? This is an asset that a lot of our major banks and telecoms have in abundance. They have trust in abundance. Across the continent, across the world, there are millions and billions of people that put enormous trust in these brands, and that can be a huge boon to the DeFi industry if these organizations find ways to interact. They have huge asset pools. They can provide liquidity into DeFi portals, and not only does that liquidity help earn money for them and for their customers, but it enhances probably the reputation of that protocol. So in some sense, you're able to find winners within the DeFi ecosystem and support them. So there's lots of opportunities for collaboration, but indeed, banks need to get out ahead and recognize that the industry is changing, whether they like it or not, probably.
Yeah. And maybe just to add, it shouldn't be as unsettling, at all, because if anything, it's a call for financial institutions to get on board and collaborate, with companies like ours to really build what, the platforms need to be decentralized and to improve the customer experience. So it's a win-win for everybody, the banks, the financial institutions, the telcos, and the customers, most importantly. I think the opportunities are limitless.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Shiku. I think that, I often say this, what customers want is generally what's going to happen. In fact, not generally, it's pretty much every single time. So if there's demand for something, and I can see already the growing demand for things like cryptocurrencies, decentralized finance, blockchain technology, etc., and more consumers and customers are digging deeper and deeper into this space. And if it can solve problems and issues for them, they're going to adopt it en masse at some stage. So I agree with you. I don't think anything's going anywhere. It's a matter now of how we start building these different platforms together. So traditional institutions, new trustless economy-based institutions, and all coming together to create these essentially perfect solutions for customers.
Yeah, so this is really a role that Utu tries to play very much, by the way, is to be a bridge from the centralized to the decentralized, both for individuals and for companies. It's a deep rabbit hole, and it's a heavy learning curve. If you're an organization that's wanting to deploy a blockchain solution because you read about it in Dentsu's white paper and you thought, this is the future. Now actually getting into it and finding blockchain developers and understanding how this ecosystem works and what drives it, it can be a lot. So that's a role that both our team and our tech is sort of designed to play.
Fantastic. So if anybody is obviously watching the interview or reading the white paper, this is actually a fantastic opportunity then. So I think what we've done is we've talked a lot about, as I said, DeFi. We've talked a lot about crypto. talked a lot about what Utu does. We've mentioned trust versus trustless. There's a lot of terminology, and I think we've had got quite a good roundhouse on that. I think one last thing, well, not last thing, but let's discuss it just for a second. But I've noticed as well within all these different platforms and initiatives, there's a number of ways that people can make money. All right. So just on a more sort of personal note, so obviously things like crypto mining, there's crypto trading, crypto selling. But one thing that's popped up recently on everybody's radars, and I think it's because of an art piece that was a golden packet of Pringles might have just blown the box office on in terms of how much it sold for. Could you give us a little bit of insight onto NFTs? And I know that you mentioned tokens within your trust-based environment using Utu as well. Could you just unpack that for us very quickly towards, this is the end of the conversation, I guess, but I just think it's in the press at the moment. NFTs are being talked about a lot, and I'd love to hear your guys' take on it.
Yeah, sure. So there's lots of different types of tokens within the blockchain crypto verse, as we call it. So there's utility tokens, there are security tokens. Utility tokens, as they sound like, they have some utility, some use, consumptive or non-consumptive use, like for governance. There are crypto tokens, basically just like Bitcoin, means of exchange, value exchange. And then we have NFTs, non-fungible tokens, right? This is a different type of token. It's not meant to be a currency in any way or necessarily to have a utility. It is more of a collectible, right? And it's not a new thing. If you guys remember from 2017 or 2016, I guess, crypto kitties was one of the first really big things that got a lot of press from the crypto world. These like digital kitties, right? Just kind of a fun thing, but it took off huge. The same way Hachi and babies
Jason,
took.
a bit like, sorry, I've just interrupted you, but no. Just crypto kitties are a bit sort of like an 8-bit design around little kitties in different, well, kittens in different situations, etc., etc. Am I right if I'm remembering correct?
Yeah, exactly. And it just became kind of a fun thing and collectibles, but it took off. And I think what we're seeing right now with this NFT boom is just a demonstration of what's possible, right? People are getting excited about what it means to tokenize art and to tokenize a collectible and to provide digital collectibles, and what sort of rights and benefits those types of collectibles could bestow upon their holders, and how they can be used to as both a standalone sector. If you look at what the NBA is doing with its NFTs, I think they've already sold more than like $500 million worth of them. But really, you can apply this in any sector where there is consumer love and interest to own some piece of memorabilia or collectible. I think it goes beyond that, though. It can be applied in customer loyalty use cases and things like this. So it's just another demonstration of the types of value that blockchain can unlock. I think the current boom is a bit early, sort of like the 2017 ICO boom, but it tested the system and it caused us to go back as an industry and fix some of the problems. There's no doubt still some problems, technically speaking, with NFTs around hosting and like the secure provenance of that. So that will all be solved. But again, this is going to be a massive industry in the next few years.
Incredible. Thank you very much. So just for clarity, NFTs can only be purchased and traded using blockchain technology and crypto?
Yeah, exactly. So they are digitally native products, right, that live on the blockchain, essentially, that you can demonstrate ownership over this unique item that is not like any other.
So that's just an example, of course, of let's call it money changing hands, all existing within a blockchain environment and nothing more than that, which is quite a great example of where this technology could go. If you think how much a couple of these NFTs are selling for, you mentioned various different organizations already. if you think of the money changing hands, and you mentioned those figures earlier on about where we were from a monetary value to where we are now, it just looks like the exponential growth of this space is not slowing down whatsoever. So
anything I'd say probably picking up.
Sorry, yeah. So I guess that's sort of us as a wrap. Besides the fact that I just wanted to mention, because we have unpacked Utu quite a lot in this space, but I just thought as an ending off, perhaps, what do you feel from a Utu point of view is, let me not call it Utu 2.0 because you guys are already at 2.3.4.0, but what's next?
Yeah, what's next for Utu? So we actually just launched our core product, our core API and SDK, basically a web infrastructure product for platforms and marketplaces and basically any digital business for whom trust is important. And generally speaking, we think about trust being important anywhere there's risk, right? Trust and risks are corollaries. The more risk I feel, the more trust I want. So things we feel risk about, our family, our home, our health, our business, and our assets. Utu seeks to be the trust infrastructure for the entire internet, providing this layer of trust to platforms where people are exposed to risk in any of those areas. So you could say our mission is to bridge the gap between how people trust in real life and how they're asked to trust online. Just make it a more human-like experience with people in charge of their own data, their own privacy. Utu believes in data as a human right. We don't own anyone's data. We don't want to own anyone's data. And so what's next for us is really just continuing to push that mission and to help companies integrate our technology into their platforms, deliver better trust and privacy for their users. Company by company, platform by platform.
Fantastic. Okay, so Jason, Chiku, it's been amazing having you. Just from my own educational purposes, to be honest, I feel like my journey in crypto is better informed after this conversation, and I hope everybody that's listened in on this interview feels the same way, whether that be organizationally or personally. I have taken one thing away that I noticed you said you trust me at a score of 7.5. Before, I'm hoping after this call, I'm up at least to 90% between both you and Chiku. We'll see how that goes as our relationship grows. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the call. And what we'll be doing in the white paper is obviously there will be contact details for you both as well within this white paper, as well as references to your platform and organization. So thank you very much. And anybody that needs to contact you or would like to is either welcome to come through Dentsu if you would like to. Otherwise, alternatively, you can obviously reach out to Jason and Chiku directly, and those details would be part of the white paper. And thank you so much, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.